we're talking a lot about Bill Clinton. What was Hillary Clinton's role in all this? Because she's not exactly someone who says, oh, no, I really don't want to get involved. So what was her role in any of this?
Well, first of all, let me say that Hillary Clinton was one of the few people I did not interview for this book. I interviewed President Clinton 3 times, Ken Starr extensively, Monica Lewinsky, Paula Jones. Mrs. Clinton opted not to sit down, but part of it was while I was working on the book, she decided to run for president, and I certainly respected and understood her reluctance to get too deeply into this story. This was a very painful episode for her. I mean, she was, as you probably know, Sam, I did get my hands on the draft indictment that the Starr prosecutors prepared in 1998. In the thick of the Lewinsky matter, they were seriously considering indicting Hillary Clinton. All of it related to the early Whitewater stuff. In fact, it turns out they were going to indict Hillary Clinton and Webster Hubbell yet again. There just wasn't a lot there, very honestly. I mean, it boiled down to a lot of the charges were, well, she lied when she said she didn't recall such and such or whatever. I just didn't see a lot with respect to Mrs. Clinton. She had done work on some of Jim McDougal's projects, and there were disagreements as to whether she remembered or didn't remember doing some of the work, but as a busy lawyer, you don't remember you billed 20 hours, on this thing or that thing over a span of time. I just didn't think, and ultimately Starr's own office concluded there wasn't enough to indict her, so there just wasn't any there.
Excuse me. Besides Mrs. Clinton, and we're speaking to Ken Gormley, author of Death of American Virtue, besides Mrs. Clinton, was there someone you wanted to interview that you couldn't, or the time with them wasn't what you wanted it to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. The only other person I really wanted to interview was Al Gore, and he was very quiet about this whole chapter in his career. Obviously, it had been a painful time for him, but to Vice President Gore's credit, I was able to talk to some key people, including Frank Hunger, his brother-in-law and confidant, and Charles Burson, who were the next best thing. I was interested in that story, Sam, because I didn't think that Gore got enough credit for his conduct during all this. I know from talking to people who were very close with him, he was outraged at President Clinton's conduct, to kind of risk everything on this kind of... You
mean the Lothario...
having this affair with Monica after he had already been in trouble with these other issues, and Paula Jones was lurking there. He was just really personally offended and knew that this could wreck his chances. But the amazing thing, and I have it in the story, is nonetheless, Al Gore comes out into the Rose Garden after the House has impeached President Clinton, stands up there and stands behind the president at a moment where if he had wavered, Clinton truly could have been driven out of office. And he
could have resigned. Could have resigned right there.
Yeah, but he knew what his duty was as vice president, and he did that even though he knew it might wreck his chances ever to become president. I thought it was really amazing, and I thought that Al Gore never got enough credit for that.
I think that John McCain, in part, lost his election last year, 2 years ago. God, 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Man. Because of the overhang of George Bush. And I think that Al Gore, and this is what I want to ask you, in part had trouble winning because of the overhang of Bill Clinton. Do you think that's so?
Well, I do. President Clinton disagrees with that strongly. And
I'm sure he does.
He made that clear to me. In interviewing Al Gore's people who were the closest with him, I mean, they had no doubt in their minds that this was directly related to the kind of Clinton exhaustion, fatigue, whatever you want to call it. But, the country had been through this traumatic event of an impeachment trial, and everyone was exhausted with it. And there's just no way that did not impact Vice President Gore. And, incidentally, I interviewed Henry Hyde before he died, who had led the impeachment for the House managers, and one of the things he was most proud of his efforts, and I have it in the book, is he said, you criticize us for doing what we thought was our job, but if we had not done it, George Bush never would have been elected. George W. Bush never would have been elected president. And I think he's right.
If you if is there a villain in this piece?
A villain? Well, again, it's the lack of restraint on both sides, Sam, that I thought was, and when I talk about the death of American virtue, I'm talking about a sense of political virtue where people used to know that you had to kind of put the brakes on yourself for the good of the country, even though you might be able to, hit the other side over with a 2x4. And both sides, and here I'm not just talking about the man Bill Clinton and the man Ken Starr, but both sides arrayed around them, and this obviously polarized the whole country, kind of lost their composure. And now we know, and I have some of this in the book, but, the Osama bin Laden and others are stalking us outside the country as we're running around interviewing women in Arkansas about Bill Clinton's sexual habits a decade earlier. So it was a sad chapter in American history. There are few heroes in this book, but the only hero in my mind is the American public ultimately put a stop to it. And if you think back on that time, because I attended the first day of the impeachment trial in the Senate, I mean, it was ultimately the American people who said, stop, enough, we've had it, the punishment doesn't fit the crime, we get it, we're done with this. And that's why it stopped.
I can't thank you enough for this interview. I really enjoyed this. I wish we had more time, but we don't. This book really encompasses everything, and it's very fairly written, and it's a great read. And I just say anybody who takes 10 years to wade through Bill Clinton's love life deserves a Nobel Prize, frankly, because I seriously, I'm reading this thing and I'm going, by the way, one of the things I thought about as I read it was Bill Clinton has a couple of affairs and he gets impeached. Osama bin Laden has 19 wives and he's a hero to millions. I never, there's something going on here that I don't think is right on a lot of levels. And I want to thank you so much for writing the book and for taking the time to be with us.
Well, thanks so much, Sam. My wife's from northern Jersey and my mom was from New York, so it's always a pleasure.
Well, in that case, tell them you killed. Because you did. I appreciate it.